And welcome into Poke the Bear episode 345, presented by Prize Picks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play just $5. And we're obviously presented by CLNS Media as well. Make sure to go subscribe to our stuff on Bruins Ringside. 6 podcasts a week, Poke the Bear, Pucks with Haggs, Bruins Beat, live streams throughout the offseason, analysis, breakdowns, all those fun things. And go subscribe there, turn on notifications, make sure to like the video. That'd be nice as well. And if you don't like looking at us, if you're like, Evan in glass is just too much to handle, I don't like it, I want to just hear him. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but I just want to hear him, and Connor's moving into the camera, and oh my God, it's too scary. He's getting too close. He's getting too close. And you want to listen? Make sure to go subscribe wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, wherever. And make sure to go subscribe to all of CLNS's other awesome content. I'm Evan Marinofski. That's Conor Ryan. Connor, what is up?
Evan, doing well. How you doing?
Doing great. Doing great. I just got back from Buffalo, USA Hockey's Select 17 camp. Some interesting prospects for next year, Connor. There were a couple draft picks there where it's like, all right, that kid's going to be a high echelon pick. Maybe not a first, but a second or a third. I'm like, all right, taking my notes. Like, all right, who the Bruins going to take with their second round pick next year? You know, I had all that laid out. But I was reading your Marco Sturm story, which I thought was phenomenal. And what I got a kick out of was one of my colleagues for New England Basketball Journal, who will remain nameless, Steve Hewitt, texted me and said, wait, did Connor really just run into Marco Sturm at the Dunks near Warrior? And I realized, like, that would honestly be a better story. Like, imagine if you ran into Marco Sturm at Dunks and, you know, he's ordering his coffee, you're behind him, you're like dying for your butter pecan. And all of a sudden, you're like, hey, Marco. You're like, hey, Marco, you got a second? And he sat down with you for
30
like a
minutes?
30-minute interview. Like,
Yes.
You have
He has
35
nothing better
minutes?
to do. Yeah.
He's just like, sure. And he just sits down and answers all your questions. I kind of like that idea. Like, I've sort of morphed it into like, yeah, that's how that happened.
Yeah, we'll roll with that, right? We'll roll with that as being the setup. I mean, I've said this a couple of times when people ask me about it. I mean, we all know that Dunkin' Donuts is where business is conducted in New England, right? So,
right.
You know, it's the crossroads of New England. It's where everyone comes together to get great coffee, strike up a conversation, either willingly or against your will from someone talking to you. It's what better place to do it at? So it worked out perfectly. I give credit to Marco. First time like meeting him one-on-one. What better place to do it than at Dunkin' Donuts? And props to him for drinking a hot coffee when it was like a swamp last week.
I was going to say that
was So all the props to him for that.
Yeah, and he's clearly a Dunks guy because you asked him about it and he had like legitimate answers and definitely was into it. His kids love Dunks, so
it'd be funny if he actually was that. Like he was just reading it up. He like knew like the calorie count on like a wake up wrap too. It's like, no, okay, you don't have to show that you like Dunkin'. You're not gonna hurt my.
We don't need that. We don't need that. He's like, you know what? I don't
have the sponsorship, so don't worry. Like, I don't have a dog in the fight.
That's right. Yeah, it's funny that like it ended up being at a Dunks because it was perfect for you to have it there because obviously you're the Dunks guy. Didn't he say like you're the Dunks guy, right?
He sure did. Yes. So apparently my reputation carries over, I guess, I'd probably say is the best way to put it. So
that's incredible.
If it makes you stick out, I'll take it.
I love the idea that he's, you know, he's like looking through Twitter and he sees you like, or Ty tweeted the thing of like the Dunks on the sign on the side of the house. And it was like, post your address. And Marco Sturm's just like, like scrolling through. Like,
well, if he was trying
to, is that really his house?
Like, yeah. If he tried to search things up though, like the Twitter button is so broken now when you try to look up old stuff that he'd probably look me up and he'd be like, why is he posting like Nick Ritchie's face on the moon? It's like, yeah, because like the tweets are all out of order now. It's like, if you search anything on Twitter, it's like a Tarantino script. It's like all over the place. It's like 2021 to last week to 2018. It's a disaster, Evan.
Well, I said this to you. Like I was trying to search a James Hagan's tweet of mine from last year. And, you know, I type in like at Evan Marinofski, James Hagan's. And a Yaroslav Halak highlight video from 2020 came up. I'm like, why is that the first result? How did you get to that? So Yeah, the Twitter search bar, I
Like,
can.
best we can do for you is bring up a music video of Rick James. That's what you asked for, right? You type
That's right.
James into the timeline. It's like, no, that's not what I'm
Here
looking
you
for.
go.
Yes.
People are pissed. By the way, this is the time of year where we are gonna do a little small talk grab ass before we get into the nitty gritty. This interview obviously went a long time. You guys went very in depth on a lot of different topics. What was your like big overarching takeaway theme that you came away with being like, all right, that either he cleared this up or he was adamant about that? What was sort of the one big thing for you?
Yeah, I think probably the big takeaway is that I think from Marco Sturm's perspective, and again, I think going into New Year, you're optimistic. You want to see what you have here. But I feel like after free agency, which was on Tuesday, where I think a lot of people were expecting the Bruins to make some big moves, kind of didn't, signed a lot of bottom six guys. We've covered all that. And I think there was that one evening of, maybe being a little bit shell shocked of like, what is this team doing? Are they really just like doubling down on what went wrong last year? Or, what are they trying to get out of this group with who they signed? And I think Marco Sturm, I think maybe cleared things up, or maybe at least was transparent about how they're viewing this year, where I think they're optimistic that they can right the ship in some respects, like the defense, the goaltending, the power play. But from what he mapped out in terms of it's not going to be fixed overnight, the fact that he mentioned like 5-on-5 scoring is going to be tough in terms of how they get assured, production from that area of the game. The fact that he's mentioned like the importance of building a foundation, of building for the future. I think it maps out that I think the way they built this team was kind of bridging it, right? I think you're looking more at 26, 27 as the year they really take steps forward when you see these younger guys ideally step up. And I think this year it's all about seeing what you get in terms of like, again, the defense and the goaltending and that stuff. But it's also about, I think, reestablishing kind of maybe more of a culture. And that's something that I feel like we hear and we're like rolling our eyes, right? Of like, all right, how much is that really going to mean? But I kind of look at, if they are viewing this as a bridge year where ideally you give some guys some more reps, and you're building for what's ahead in 26, 27 and beyond that, and you're seeing how James Higgins does at BC, and you're ideally bringing up, Patra or Minton or all those guys, maybe it is about bringing in veterans like Corrali and Tanner Jeannot, which again, I don't like the contract, but you could see maybe why they're viewing a guy like that. And I think Don Sweeney mentioned on Tuesday after all those signings that he wanted the Bruins to be a tough out and that they weren't that last year. And I think all of us, when we hear that, we're like, well, they wanted to be a tough out last year in the playoffs and it didn't mean anything because they didn't even make the playoffs. I wonder if like where Marco Sturm's talking about setting the foundation, building things back up, giving guys more opportunities and, waiting for some of these younger players to step up. I wonder for them, hard out isn't we got to build a team for the playoffs. It's hard out of like this year is going to be uphill climb. It's going to be some growing pains. We're probably going to, be a work in progress in a lot of different areas. It might be tough, but the guys we bring in, like maybe we're not getting blown out 7-2 every 4 or 5 games like it was last year, where it's like we're might be on the wrong side of the scoreboard most nights as we give guys more opportunity and we're playing the long game here, but we're going to go down swinging in the process. And if younger guys are stepping up or they're going to be in the room and they see guys like Corrali or AC Mont or Jeannot stay competitive, continue to stay
Raising
focused.
hell.
Yeah. Maybe that's just kind of the culture you want to put in place as you're hoping for greater returns in 26, 27. Maybe that's me more reading the tea leaves, but I think hearing Marco Sturm mention those things as principles moving forward, it at least, I think, clarifies a little bit of how they're viewing this year. Hopeful, but if it is going to be a work in progress, which I think we most assume, they at least have a plan in place of what they're trying to get out of this year if it doesn't end up being in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you look at, we've touched on this 1,000 times, the blowouts last year, how it would be like a 2-1 game, and then suddenly it's a 4-1 game, and then it's a 6-1 game, and it just would snowball. And you can blame the roster all you want. You can blame the on-ice play all you want. Getting blown out like that consistently, especially to teams who aren't good, like didn't it happened in Seattle, Buffalo, like that's a lack of mental toughness. That's a lack of leadership. That's a lack of just that intangible of like, we're not going to let this snowball. And it did all the time. Obviously, there's 82 games in a year. You're going to have one or two where it gets out of hand. It ain't your night.
Yeah.
Turn the page. Like, that happens. It happens to every team every season. But like the rate at which it happened. And the Jeannot comment was interesting because he said, quote, Tanner Jeannot, he's just a typical Boston Bruins guy. Reminds me of all of those old players we had here. He knows what it takes, and he will also take care of the room. He's a great teammate and also take care of the guys on the ice, and that's what we needed. It sounds like, and I was here in the past, but it sounds like that got lost a little bit, and that's what we wanted to attack, to be a really competitive group again. And that hits on what you just said of like, that's how they want to be. And it's sort of a, I think they hope that the Corrales and the Acimons and the Jeannots are good examples as well for younger guys, for harder practices. Sturm mentioned practices in there as well. Yeah. And this isn't me saying like, these are all phenomenal moves. This is great.
No,
it's just, I think this is what they are looking at. This is what they're going for. Whether or not it's the right thing. I mean, I think we can all agree they were not going to leave free agency and be like, oh my God, that's a playoff team. Like that was never, ever going to happen. And I think they look at this as this is their best path forward, not just for this season, as you said, but also for helping them in future years where you toughen the younger kids up and you have those examples in the room. And I mean, how many times did we say it, Connor, last season? They're missing veteran guys. They're missing voices in that room. And I know we also scoff at that oftentimes. We're also like, seriously, like, come on. But that stuff does matter. It matters in the course of a season. And
they that quite a bit this past year. Like they missed a Shattenkirk, a Maroon, a Van Riemsdyk. Like those things do matter.
They do. And I think, again, my issue with the signings was not that they did that. It was that they had so many of them. And it's like, okay, who's fitting where? But these Sturm answers do help alleviate some of that, of giving clarity to that and how they're going to play. And he also mentioned somewhere in here, I can't find it, but they're going to be a low scoring team. It's going to be low scoring games. And we anticipated this. This was the thing with bringing in Marco Sturm. We said it from the jump, and he talked about this sort of with the Kings, where that's how they started out. The Kings started their sort of rebuild-ish back to being prominent with being a defensive team. And we've talked about this 1,000 times. The strength of this roster is on defense. It's in net, and I think these signings all sort of contribute that, and I think Sturm's answers shine a light on that.
Yeah, I think it does the Bruins good when they are kind of more candid and transparent about what their outlook is. And I think every team, no one is going to, after July 1st, be like, yeah, we're screwed, fellas. Like, don't get the season tickets. Like,
don't buy the tickets. Don't buy tickets.
And again, I think they believe that things can go right for them if they get back to playing to their strengths, right? It's not going to maybe be the most riveting product, but if you want to say the defense really stabilizes, they change around like the neutral zone, Swayman gets, returns to form, all that stuff. And the power play, let's say under Steve Spott and the personnel they have there, kicks up to 18th, right? Not 29th. They'll be in the mix, right? Like that could happen. Or like they could really struggle to score. Injuries could pop up again, and they're a lottery team. I feel like if that scenario plays out where they come up short and they are a lottery team, they're at least better prepared for that, where it's almost like this will be another bridge year. They're still have all their draft picks. You hope that they're giving guys like, let's say, Fraser Minton or Patra or Lysell or whoever it may be, giving them minutes this year, that if they end this year, let's say, and you got a top 10 pick, but you're seeing some progress from the younger players, you still have a lot of flexibility with your draft picks and some money coming off the books next year. And all of a sudden you look and see James Hagen's had a great sophomore year at BC and he's ready to roll. And Will Zeller's probably isn't ready, but he has a good year at North Dakota. And you feel like you have that next wave coming in and you can tackle whatever might be more available for you next year in 26. But this year you saw a lot of growth from younger players who both got the minutes, but also I think got acclimated to what the standard has to be here. And if Marco Sturm can preach that with the way they want to play, getting back to their fundamentals, focusing on tough practices, changing their approach on the ice. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be overnight, but if you at least have that foundation in place, and you can look at it. I think we've said this even before Sturm kind of dove more into it, Evan, where like if this team doesn't make the playoffs this year, but Bruins fans can see the plan and it's slowly coming together. And for Bruins fans, it's not like this past year where, you get to April and everyone's like, thank God that year's over. Like the best case scenario, if they don't make the playoffs, is like, I can't wait for next year because we feel like we got a lot of talent coming in here. So I think it does help the Bruins quite a bit of just being more transparent about that, because as much as Bruins fans are used to high expectations and pedal to the metal and have that win now mentality, I think you can also sell them on a year or two of that, as long as you make good on your end of giving younger guys some run here, which I think is the big issue, because a lot of roster spots are taken up right now. That is what you have to see actually play out, I think.
It is. It absolutely is. And I want to get into that because there's a great quote that Sturm, and he was talking a lot about specifically Patra and Minton. But first, our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. On Prize Picks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports. Combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. Prize Picks, they're pretty they got some inventions because they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And Prize Picks, they put their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus because it's guaranteed. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. I was looking ahead so much to the run your game part that I stumbled over the what you're gonna get out of this. So
it was just so good that I understand, Evan. You were shocked for a second there. I do it all the time.
I was. And by the way, the Red Sox aren't playing the Rockies anymore, so I don't know.
Yeah, they might be in trouble now.
Yeah, that's they have good teams coming up. But hey, Romy Gonzalez, Roman Anthony, they're cooking. Trevor Story's been cooking. Cedar Rafaela's been cooking.
I think I think if you play the Rockies, everyone is cooking.
Everyone's cooking. But I will say the runs, hits, RBI one, I love that one. I had one hit the other night, which was just fantastic. I had one. It was like Cedar Rafaela, more than 0.5 hits, runs, and RBI. Roman Anthony, more than 0.5 hits, runs, and RBI. Trevor Story, more than 0.5 hits, run, and RBI. And then, because you have to do another team, Kyle Schwarber, more than 0.5 hits, run, and RBI. So hits, run, RBI, I always like. That's a good one to do. So on younger players, this was an interesting one, and I'm glad you asked about Patra and Minton and those kinds of guys, because you said, what type of opportunity will those guys be afforded? And he said, I think it's really important. Again, I love working with those guys. I think I'm a guy where I will give them everything I can. I will teach them. I will push them. But they also will dictate where they're going to go. For me, that's the player, and that's on them. And again, if they play good enough, then I don't have a problem with playing them. I want them to have success. But if not, maybe they're not ready yet, and maybe they have to learn the hard way. Hopefully we do have some spots available, and I think it sounds like some of the guys have a really good opportunity. I really hope they grab it because I want them to grab it. I want that competition in our lineup, especially with those young guys. I'm a big believer in that we want to play a fast-paced game, and you kind of need those young legs too. So hopefully some guys will come through. Now, here's the thing, right? Up until that last line, I was like, all right, that's kind of the company line. Sweeney says same
coach
stuff.
Speech.
Like,
yeah,
that's coach talk. I get that. But what gives me a little hope for these younger players, from Minton, Patra, Lysell, Merkulov, any young guy, pick any young guy, but especially Patra and Minton, is I'm a big believer in that we want to play a fast-paced game, and you kind of need those young legs to do that. That, to me, is somewhat eye-opening in like, all right, they're going to play up tempo, which is what the league has gone towards. Clearly, they seem to want to do that. Their free agent signings might not signal that. Their free agent signings more so are for the leadership end of things. But playing fast, that does benefit Patra. That does benefit Minton. And if maybe they don't have a spot right out of camp, for their sake, hopefully they find a way in because they are playing that fast-paced game and they fit along with that.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think I was glad too that Marco was pretty candid about just, I think the tweaks offensively. And again, it's not set in stone. Like they're still looking at how they're going to maybe tweak the defense. Like if they go, they've had zone for, like since Claude Julien's been there, but I wonder if they change those kinds of things around. They're reworking the neutral zone, see what that is. I wonder what Nikita Zadorov's going to think of what to do with the neutral zone. So we'll see what happens there. But offensively, I mentioned that, the last couple of years, they've been more of that quality over quantity approach under Jim Montgomery. And it's a winning formula. And I think every team would love to have that approach of being more selective, but you need the talent in place. Like, you need, if you're like the St. Louis Blues where they have those kinds of players now, and you've got legit top 6 guys across the lineup, whether it's even like say like a Holloway now, you got the Thomas, you've got Kyrie's, all that type of talent. When the Bruins had it in 22-23, yeah, you had friggin' Taylor Hall in the third line. Like you had the depth and the talent to go with that approach. And he kind of mentioned multiple times about like you also have to know what team you have and what roster you have and what your strengths and where your limitations are going to be, and you can change as that goes along, which is encouraging because it feels like the Bruins did not have enough skill and they kept on playing that style of approach offensively last year, and you just didn't have the talent to execute it right. It's like having like the 80s Celtics do like the Showtime Lakers style of play. Like Larry Bird's not running the fast break like that,
Ain't gonna work.
So I think for them, if they change that approach offensively of being more of a shot volume, fast paced, I'm not sure if it's going to be like off the rush necessarily, but more of like simplify. We're dumping pucks in. We're going to be really aggressive on the forecheck, but you have kind of the heft now all across the lineup to have that kind of punishing approach and then just pepper the net. And I think if you have guys like a Lysell who moves well, Minton moves pretty well for his style of play. Adding and incorporating more of those younger players, let's say even like a Wash Mellis, maybe if he fights for a spot, it's a style that isn't set in stone as to how much production you're going to get out of it. It's a lot of, it's even a team that has like patented it. Like let's say the Carolina Hurricanes can put 40 shots on net and they lose 2-1. There's times where that happens, right? The Bruins under Bruce Cassidy had a lot of nights like that, right? Where they would easily outshoot the team. But I think if you are a group that has a lot of young players, has some speed added to the lineup, and doesn't have the pure skill just to wait for those grade A opportunities, and you're just flinging pucks on net, wait for rebounds, tips, what have you. If you are talent deficient across, especially up front in your forward core, I think it's a good approach to have. And I think bringing in more young guys that have those legs feeds into that as well, which is, I think is encouraging. To your point, it's one thing to be like, yeah, we want to give all the young guys all the reps. We heard Jim Montgomery say that. We heard Bruce Cassidy say that. Different thing in practice. But also if you're changing your offensive approach where it is maximized by having young legs in the lineup, makes it a lot easier as to why he'd more lean towards those players than maybe an older veteran.
And again, I'll believe it when I see it. Like that's how I feel, and that's not a Marco Sturm thing either. Yes. Like that's any coach. Any coach.
It's easy to say it in July.
Yes,
nothing to actually do it in October.
It's easy to say it in pressers. We'll get him in there.
Or at Duncan.
That's right. That's right. He knew. He's like, I'm in his haven. I can't badmouth.
I cannot tell a lie. Yes.
No, I must be honest. But yeah, I mean, I do think that's an encouraging thing. And then there was another quote that I really thought was interesting. You asked, and we've touched on this a little, but I haven't read the quote yet. You said, do you feel you have the personnel in place to consistently generate offense this season? And he said, I'm not going to lie.
He threw coffee in my face. No,
he said, how dare you? How dare you? Carl Corzini came out of the floor with like a whiteboard and said, this is how we're going to get offense, actually. And this is the personnel that makes sense for it. Marco said, I'm not going to lie. It's going to be hard, right? I mean, going back to what I just said, I wish we would have everything, but there's always a path to it. We did that. I believe you always have to have a foundation first, and you can't look ahead. I know you like to, but I think we're in a really good spot right now with our core guys. I think we have that foundation now. Now my job is to build that foundation into the way we want to play, right? And we still want to have a good defensive identity. So again, they're a defensive team, no question. And him saying it's going to be hard. Like, and that goes back to what you said earlier about be honest about what you are. And this was something that was sort of clouded a bit at that end of season presser with Neely, Jacobs, and Sweeney, where it was like, what are you? Like, what is your plan? And I feel like we really didn't know where they were headed, what they were trying to do until they kept that 7th pick. I mean, the deadline was what it was, but that was more a sell-off from that season. And the deadline was an A+. I think we can all agree on that. But it wasn't really until the draft that we knew, okay, this is the route they're going to take. Like I've said this a couple times where it's like, if they dealt James Hagans, let's just say for Noah Dobson, if they dealt that 7th pick for like Noah Dobson and like JG Pajot or something, right? Like that, I would hate that. That would be really bad. But that would signal like, all right, they're trying to win now. They're trying to keep this balloon in the air. They're in the other direction. They're okay with this. And they're being honest, at least like, Marco Sturm is saying these things and kind of giving fans an idea that it's not going to be the easiest season, or it might not be the easiest season, and maybe setting expectations a little lower. It's like, remember when you take a hard test in a class and you'd be like, well, if I can just get over like a 75, like I'll be happy. Like I feel like that's this, but I give him credit for saying that and not setting the bar ridiculously high and getting everybody's expectations sky high. I think they know what they're going to be.
Yeah, it's almost like last year the expectations were so high that you feel like you like aced that test and you're like, woo, I'm ready to go. And then you realize you like wrote in blue ink when it was only in black ink, so you just failed the test. Like last year they were like, what invalid. The hell? Yeah, like I think last year they were like shocked at just how much things went off the rails, which like you saw it kind of brewing, but I don't think anyone expected it just to dismantle like that. And this year I think, yeah, there's more reasonable expectations of, again, they can map out ways it can go right. Like, maybe David Pastrnak just keeps on being a cheat code, or you can say Geeky can be more of that 25-30 goal guy. Lindholm ends the year on a high note. Maybe that carries over. That's all well and good. Also probably a little bit unrealistic. Like you still have a lot of unknowns, even on that second line. Like could Zacha, Middlestat, and Arvidsson be a solid second line? Maybe, but there's a lot of uncertainty with that group of just what actual production you're getting. All three of those guys could be 60 point guys. I almost said 60 goal guys. That would be unrealistic.
60 goal. Jake DeBrusk with like, what was it, like 120 exactly. Goals or something?
Goals per game.
That's right.
But like they all could be 60 point guys. Also, they could be end of the year and like one's got 41 points, one's been traded, and one's struggling. Right? Like there's a lot of variance there. Let alone whatever the bottom six is, right? Of like, you've got a lot of low ceiling offensive guys, I think, in those spots in the bottom six, barring a younger player like a Patra or Minton, or even like Blumel, the Czech winger they brought in. Like, you don't really know what to expect from him. So there's a lot of uncertainty. Maybe things, trend in the right direction, but that's not a lock. But I think from the Bruins, right, if it is a struggle and you are really fighting and swimming against the tide this year in terms of offensive production, if you still are able to get a competitive, not like competitive in the standings, but competitive Stanley on the ice.
Contenders.
Yeah. Like I think competitive can be, has a couple of different meanings. I think this team, it's maybe not what we're used to, what competitive is, of playing in April and May and hopefully June. Like, I don't think that's what they're trying to get out of this team if things go awry. And I don't think maybe even things go awry is the right term. Last year was things went awry. Things went off the rails. This year, it's an expected weakness that plays out, right? And so if that's the case and you are able to make the most of the year by giving guys opportunity and you let the prospects marinate, you keep your draft picks, you maybe sell off another piece or two, get more draft capital, and then you go into next year and it's not going to, I think, be done overnight, but let's say you're then able to bring in James Hagans after a great year, and maybe like one of Marty Necas or someone is free up. Like, I don't think Jack Eichel's coming here, but maybe you have the money to bring in a guy like Necas or something like that. That doesn't fix everything, but you're on the right track, right? And you got a lot of capital and a lot of stuff to spend moving forward. I think that could be a very realistic way of how they approach things.
It's funny, like when you said the second line part about Zacha, Middlestat, and
scoring 180 goals,
scoring tons of goals. NHL.com put out like a projected roster, and I think almost everyone who puts out a projected roster, their top 6 is almost unchanged. It's always, obviously Geeky, Lindholm, and Pasternak, and then you have the 3 I just mentioned, the second line. Third and fourth line is where things get interesting. I do wonder if we leave camp and it's a different top 6. If you mentioned Blumel, does Steves is on a one-way deal too? Does Steves find a way in there? Does Matt Poitras find a way in the top 6? Does Fraser Minton somehow and I'm not saying that's all going to happen. It can't. It can't possibly all happen. But it wouldn't shock me if someone in that next group bumps their way up. I mean, this is the way their roster is, where it's like, all right, yeah, Zacha, Middlestat, Arvidsson, yeah, on paper they make the most sense, but maybe someone else emerges in camp. Maybe someone else emerges in those preseason games, and suddenly the top 6 looks much different, or at least that I guarantee you it happens at some point during the season too. Like, I think it's entirely possible they might be looking at this roster differently.
Yeah, I mean, it would change the whole complexion of this team if it's kind of what we mentioned, I think, on Bruins Beat, of where you've got a lot of really promising prospects in the system now. They're all not going to hit, but out of like 10, if 2 to 3 of them hit and end up stepping into roles the next couple of years, it changes the entire outlook of what your team is. So I don't think that, Tanner Jeannot is going to go back to being a 20-goal, 300-hit guy, nor do I think all these guys are going to be hits. But like, if one of, let's say, Blumel hits, I'm not saying he's going to be a 30-goal, like, holy crap. It's kind of what we talked about with like when they brought in Soderstrom, they traded for him, and we're like, he's not going to be Gustav Forsling, but like maybe he can be like a third pairing guy. Yeah. If Blumel can be like a third line shot first guy, it could be, gives you 15, 20 goals, and you bring in that guy on a flyer and he ends up being someone you can pencil in moving forward. Like, how much does it alleviate your concerns if next year, let's say, barring whatever the prospects or anything plays out, if you can go into next season penciling in, let's say, Minton as your 3C and Blumel as your third line right wing? Like,
you take it.
Yes, it's not, doesn't mean they're going to carry over whatever success they might have this year, but just having more of that parts of your lineup settled in moving forward is going to be key. And I think that's what they need to do. Like, you hope they make the playoffs. Everyone hopes that. But if you're able to look at this lineup that has a lot of uncertainty, a lot of areas of their game where you can't look at 4 or 5 guys and be like, I can pencil that guy in for 15 goals, 40 points. You don't have a lot of that on this team right now. If you're able to find out some of those players and where they can plug in for 26, 27 and beyond, I think that has to be key. You have to find guys that can be part of your long-term solution. And now is the time to do it in a year where it feels like they are preaching patience, I think. And I feel like that's the right move to do when you look at what was available this offseason, what they were able to try to do, what didn't happen. I think you have to take that approach.
And how many times have we talked about the Tampa Bay Lightning or the Florida Panthers getting these guys in their bottom 6 or on their third pair on D who they find somehow and they become impact guys? Happens all the time with those two teams and others as well. And that's what you need to be a contending team. And if Blumel or Steves or Minton or like those guys, if those guys can pop, and it's a lot to ask, by the way, like we're making it sound easier than it is.
Yes.
But if that can happen, the outlook on the team is completely different. Things are much, much different down there, and you're a different team.
It's kind of what we said about like the Letourneau thing. I think that was the thing where you're not, I think, setting too high expectations, but how much does it just change your outlook where you can see him, let's say he has a stronger year as a sophomore at BC, and down the road, like he could be a third line regular for us, right? And I know people be like, "Oh, you shouldn't get a first round pick out of that." Whatever. Like, if he is a viable NHL player, it just makes it so much easier to map out what the next steps are for this team and how you can map out the roster moving forward. So if you are able to get, create the opportunity for those players, whether it's the free agent pickups that I think you're taking a flyer on that have maybe higher upside, or the prospects in your system, it will be huge for this team moving forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Something else that's huge. Make sure to go subscribe to Bruins Ringside on YouTube. Lots of great content throughout the offseason with Bruins Beat, Poke the Bear, Pucks with Haggs, and obviously subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Leave us a nice review. We enjoy it. It means a lot to us. Rate us 5 stars. We like it. We do. I'm not going to tell you to rate us 3 or 1. Please rate us 5. That would be nice.
If I read the bad comments, I cry. So please don't.
Yeah, it's exactly it. I weep.
Yes.
I can't stop weeping when I read the bad comments. It's funny if you look up Bruins Beat on Apple Podcasts, one of the first reviews you see is like 1 star, and it's like, don't ever have that troll DJ Bean on again. It's from like 2 years ago. I always see it. I'm like, why is that still there? It's so funny. But make sure to go do that, and make sure to go subscribe to all of CLNS's other great content. If you like the Pats, Patriots Press Pass, like the Celtics All Access. So go do all that. Conor, what else from this Q&A were you piqued your interest? And just kind of like ending off, walking away from the interview, do you feel any different about the hire?
I don't feel any. I mean, I would say as far as like other takeaways, I think it all just kind of harkens back to, I think that it's better when you have a coach who is very candid of what the expectations are. Like the expectations, of course, are to win a Stanley Cup, but I think after so many years of this team being win now, putting this team over the top, I think taking a step back, almost taking a deep breath and be like, all right, what do we need to do this year to essentially get our shit in order? I almost feel like this is like the get your shit in order kind of season where I think it was Scott McLaughlin of WEI who made the comparison of like Marco Sturm with Mike Vrabel, where again, Mike Vrabel was a lot more of an accomplished coach, like when the Patriots brought him in for what he did with Tennessee, but I think was brought in as a guy that's like, last year was a disaster. We're going to fix things, get things back right, and we're going to build things back up again. And I feel like, I don't know if the Bruins are going to have the turnaround season that the Patriots could have based on just how light their schedule is. But if you are able to look at this team and it feels like the conditions of your organization, the outlook of your franchise is a lot better moving forward, I think you can sell Bruins fans on that, right? Where this year it might be tough in terms of you're not getting the wins and losses. You're not getting the wins. You might get a couple of losses.
You're gonna get some losses.
Yeah, but if they are a competitive group on the ice, they're going to answer the bell. They're going to be physical. They're going to step up when teams are toying with them, and you are also able to see some younger players get that opportunity. And if you're a Bruins fan, who, I mean, I said this before, as much as Bruins fans focus in on winning and hate when they're in a rut, and there was a lot of those last year. I mean, hell, we were in March and April, and there was nothing good to talk about. You had Bruins fans like retweeting Will Zeller's highlights in the USHL. Like,
That's right.
Bruins fans know their shit when it comes to hockey, right? And I think they, as long as you're candid with them as far as what the plan is, you can sell them on taking a step back this year, getting the rot, I think, out of the organization and building for what 26-27 could be. And I think, again, I think it all goes back to, I think it was just a good interview that's enlightening in terms of, I feel like, especially after Tuesday with free agency, where everyone's saying, what is this team doing? Like, are they just repeating what last year was? I feel like now you have more context with what they're trying to build. And I think it all comes back to that competitiveness and hard out and all those types of things where it can mean different things. I think they want to be competitive, but if it's not playoff competitive, it's about setting the standard that I think this team wants to have when you have guys like Haggs and Zellers and all those guys stepping up into roles in the next couple of years.
I agree. And one thing I kind of took away from this interview reading it, and I felt this way about Sturm since he's gotten hired, listening to him in his opening press conference, his thing with Felger and Maz, his interview with you, like, I think he gets it. I think he gets it here. And obviously he played here, and that's been talked about a lot. And he always brings it up about how his teams were and how he understands the market. But I do think it is important that a coach understands this market. You hit on it just now. Bruins fans are smart. They can see through BS. And over the last 3 years, there was a lot of BS. And the fact that Sturm took the time to sit at a Dunks after you randomly ran into him in line, not actually, but I like that idea better.
Yes.
But the fact that to explain his vision and to articulate that and to go into Felger and Maz, who threw hard questions at him, and sit there and take it all and with a smile and, be honest and give legitimate answers. Like, I think fans like that. And I think it sets where it's like, it hits at kind of the theme of this whole episode where it's like, yeah, it's going to be hard, but at least people know it's going to be hard and understand that there is a plan in place. Whereas I just feel the last couple of years, there was a lot of that BS, and Sweeney falls victim to this a lot too, where it's like, what are you saying? You're speaking to me in like corporate speak. I can't like, I have to like take it apart to make it even make sense. Sturm talks like a human. Like, I don't know. That's my biggest thing. It sounds dumb, but he makes himself, you can understand what he's saying. You get it. And obviously, as the season goes along, there will be critiques. There will be wrong decisions. There will be things we are like, what is he saying? That doesn't make any sense. But so far, he's done pretty well. And again, it's been a month. So, I mean, there's not much to go off of. But at least in this sort of opening media tour and the message he's putting out there, I think he's doing the right thing. I do. I think he's doing the right thing so far. Conor, what can the people look forward to from you over at the Globe and Boston.com?
Yeah, you can read me over at the Globe and Boston.com. We have covered every step of the way this Bruins offseason going into the 25-26 season. You can read all my stuff over on those two websites. And if you also want to follow me on Twitter, X, whatever you call it these days, you can at Conor Ryan _93.
Go do all that. That's Conor Ryan. I'm Evan Marinofski. Poke the Bear listeners, have a great rest of your week.